All right, it's live. So, welcome to the Pixel Project's Read for Pixels Google Hangout session in support of the celebrity male role model Pixel Reveal campaign. To find out more about the Pixel Reveal campaign to end violence against women, visit reveal.thepixelproject.net. My name is Sulo, and I'm your host today. And today we have a special treat for you, a live reading and Q&A session by the lovely Delilah S. Dawson. So please join me in welcoming Delilah. Delilah writes whimsical and dark fantasy for adults and teens. Her Blood series for pocket includes Wicked as They Come, Wicked After Midnight, and Wicked as She Wants. Is a winner of the RT Book Review Steampunk Book of the Year and May Seal of Excellence for 2013. Her young adult debut, Servants of the Storm, was just released in August, and with another young adult from Simon Pulse in April 2015, a pre-dystopian cult hit. Her geek erotica series under pseudonym Eva Lovelace includes The Lumber Fox and The Super Fox with the Dapper Fox on the way. Delilah is also the associate editor at www.coolmompics.com and www.coolmomtech.com, where she's given the more eccentric and geeky products cover. She lives with a husband, 2 small children, a horse, a dog, and 2 cats in Atlanta. You can check out more information about Delilah at her website, delilahsdawson.com. Delilah, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today and for your support of the cause.
Thanks so much for having me and for bringing this together.
We are really excited to have you here today, and we understand that you're going to be reading the first chapter of the first Blood book, Wicked as They Come. Really excited to hear that. So anytime you're ready, you can just take it away.
All right. Yep, this is Wicked as They Come, the first in the Blood series from Pocket. And I'm reading this because the heroine has just left an abusive relationship. I was the one who found Mrs. Stein's body 2 weeks ago. Now, here I was, pawing through her things, finally free to explore her creepy old house. It wasn't personal, though. I had barely known her, and the estate sale was probably her idea anyway, one last attempt to infuriate her children. The second I saw the sign, I had to stop. She had been surprisingly paranoid for a hospice patient, and I had never seen anything of her historic Victorian home beyond the downstairs bedroom where she had chosen to spend her remaining days. The chance to explore was just too interesting to pass up. Plus, I'd said goodbye to most of my worldly possessions when I left Jeff, and I had an hour to kill until my next patient. I was starting over from scratch and didn't have the money or the lifestyle for priceless antiques, but I always had room for treasure. Knickknacks, odd paintings, or costume jewelry would help liven up my empty apartment. Best of all, though, the sun-dappled attic upstairs was wall-to-wall books. For me, that was heaven. When I first saw the chain hanging from the top of the old book, I didn't know what to think. I tugged it up. As the flat locket slid from between the pages, I got a little rush of excitement, like when pulling the prize out of a box of cereal. Sure, it was tarnished and grimy, but it was a prize nonetheless. Maybe my luck was finally changing. I let the locket dangle in a sunbeam, charmed by its age and strangeness. I could picture it shining on some young lady's neck, part of an epic story full of romance and a Prince Charming who didn't turn out to be an overbearing, soul-sucking jerk. Not that I was bitter or anything. I just wanted to start over fresh, make that goodbye really mean something positive. It's funny how a relationship can sneak up on you like that. It starts with a whirlwind courtship, dozens of roses and poetry and dancing. He buys you a toothbrush, gives you a drawer. You move in. You give in on little things just to make him happy. The curtains, your hair, which he thinks you should grow out. Then it's bigger things. The checkbook, your job, and the one big thing, the baby that you lose, the gift he wasn't ready to give you. His relief at your pain kills something inside you, the hardest goodbye of all. And then one day you realize that you're basically a plaything and property to a man who's charmed you out of your pants and into the perfect wedding ring he had picked out before he even met you. That he's not making plans with you, He's making you fit into his plans, no matter what the cost. You realize that you've become a paper doll with paper thoughts, that it was all too easy to give up control. And then one night he hits you, and you pull your dignity up off the floor and kick the bastard to the curb. You say goodbye, and then you leave. And then you get somewhere else and learn how to say hello again. "Hello," I said to the locket, trying it out. Just looking at it made me happy in a way I had forgotten. The feeling of hope, of indulgence. I'd forgotten how good it felt to choose something for myself, to see an object and say, "I'm going to make that mine." It was pretty in such a Gothic, old-fashioned way. One side had a large flat stone, maybe a ruby or maybe just glass, and the other side of the oval had indecipherable writing around the edge with a compass rose in the center. I breathed on the metal and rubbed it on my scrub pants, but its secrets remained safe under eons of muck. Just as I was about to head downstairs to pay for the locket, a little old lady appeared at my elbow and said, "Excuse me, miss, can you read this?" "I'd be glad to try," I said with a smile. He handed me a crusty old salt cellar, and I read the smudged greased pencil price. I was like a magnet for old people, maybe because I was accustomed to helping them at work as a hospice nurse, maybe because I looked kind, or maybe because every time I looked at an elderly person, I thought of my grandmother and couldn't help smiling. Taking care of my grandmother was one of my greatest joys and greatest sorrows. I got to be with her and help her, take care of all the nursing tasks that she would be mortified to impose on a stranger. But I also had to watch her die, and it broke my heart. With my mom gone and my dad remarried across the country, it was all the family I had. The hours I spent with her every day were precious to me, and I couldn't believe how much time I had lost with her by wasting time with death. This old lady had that same sort of fire that made my grandmother special, a mix of manners and moxie that I hoped I had inherited. Watching her eyes narrow at the offending salt cellar reminded me of going antique shopping with Nana when I was little, puppy jelly beans one at a time as she haggled. Still, I was expected at Mr. Rathbun's house, and after that I had 4 more hospice patients waiting. Old people get really cranky when they're late. I was just opening my mouth to apologize and slip away when my beeper went off. It was my case manager, followed by 911. "Excuse me," I said, rushing past the surprised old woman and down the narrow staircase. "Must be a doctor," I heard her remark to someone else before I was out of earshot. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, I thought, remembering the night that Jeff tore up my applications to medical school and threw them into the trash. Then I corrected myself. I can still be a doctor if I want to. Nothing's stopping me. I can be anything and anyone I want to be. No one's going to tell me what to be, ever again. Back in my car, I reached into my pocket for my cell phone to call the office. Instead, I found the locket. Staring at it, I reminded myself that I was not a thief, that I had never stolen anything in my life, on purpose. But something I couldn't explain kept me from going back inside and making things right. The busy woman running the estate sale probably didn't even know the locket existed, and the recently deceased Mrs. Stein wouldn't miss it. There wasn't a price on it. Still, I couldn't help imagining police cars with blinking lights surrounding my little sedan in the driveway, as the officers with guns ordered me to put my hands up. So much of the last 3 years of my life had been based on fear. I tugged the chain over my head and pulled my long dark hair out from under it. I couldn't help giving myself a sly grin in the fold-down mirror. The locket was heavy and it hung exactly over my heart, much lower than most of my necklaces. I tucked it under my scrub top, enjoying the dull weight against my skin and wondering what sort of metal lurked under the tarnish. Maybe once it was cleaned, I could have the chain shortened. Or maybe I could keep it a secret, just because I could. That's the end of chapter 1, and here's a hint. The locket takes her to a magical world full of hot guys.
Our favorite kind of world, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we need more of them.
Definitely. So I just wanted to quickly talk to you about how you've actually started the book, because I found it quite interesting. She starts off having left the horrible bits of her past behind her, and she's empowered to move forward and do what she said. Okay, I'm going to start a new life. I'm going to put this behind me. And I think that's such a great way to start anything, because you don't want to just look at the negative. You want to start it off saying, okay, look, this happened to me, but I'm moving on, and I started my new life. So maybe you could just talk to us a little bit about how you got that, how you managed to put that in context about being her becoming empowered and talking about her past very openly.
I read a lot, as you can probably guess. And one of the things that I have trouble with in some romances is the insta-love, where the girl shows up and she meets the guy and they instantly know that they were meant and they were fated and they were bonded. And I wanted Tish to have a reason to fight that when she met the guy that she ultimately ended up with, because I wanted it to be less of a... So many romantic books have that plot of, I don't understand you, and if I just said one more line about my true feelings, we wouldn't even be having this argument. And more about two people honestly saying, I really love you, but I understand that you need more, and you saying, yes, I have to make this decision on my own. I'm not going to just fall for you because you're good looking and run a carnival and are a magical vampire.
Yeah.
So I wanted her to come to that damage and have issues. I don't know, I wanted it to start in a place where she was flawed and where the hero, Criminy, would not be necessarily a safe haven so much as a challenge for her, as someone that would help her grow as a person and become stronger, who would provide the healthy relationship and consent and understanding that someone in that position needed, as compared to some of the romances you read where it's almost an alpha male that's very masculine and imposing and almost a forceful meaning. I wanted a hero that wouldn't touch her until she was okay with that.
Okay. If that's the case, you did an amazing job with that, because I find her a very spunky character. She's been through a lot. She's not taking any more crap from anyone, and at the same time she acknowledges that, okay, look, I have some vices, but that's okay. So I really like that, which leads us to, in your overall writings, we look at female characters, and how would you describe your characters overall, aside from Tish, who's amazing and fast becoming one of my favorite female characters? The rest of
This series is full of uppity women who don't fall for love at first sight. This one, which is the one that won those awards you mentioned earlier, is probably my favorite book in the series. Everybody knows about Princess Anastasia from the Russian history, that basically she was a girl who never got to be queen or find power. She was just killed off because she was a threat. So I turned her into a near-feral vampire princess who wants to kill everyone. And she has to travel across the country in an airship brothel to take back her throne. So that's a lot of fierce woman right there.
That's right. Again, somebody who just goes, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and yeah, whatever. Which is quite women tend to. I mean, I think in society we tend to talk about women, and women have a certain stereotypical role to fill, and if you step out of it, people aren't so happy. There's a certain way to do it. So I like the fact that she's so in your face and be like, this is what I'm doing, deal with it. So that's great. We want to talk about, sorry?
Okay, can I mention this one? This one, the last book in the series, Wicked After Midnight, is about a girl from our world who ends up a blood-drinking contortionist in the cabarets of Paris during, the kind of whole Van Gogh, Can, Cabaret, Moulin Rouge time. And I almost read the scene where she goes up against the Parisian cops who are basically saying, you're a Can girl, we don't really care. And she's going, really, tell me to my face that because I'm a woman, you're not going to investigate this, and that I wasn't allowed to kill this man in self-defense. And she threatens to go all diva and lawyer on them, but girls didn't get to say that in the 1900s, early in France. They didn't get to stand up for this. They weren't even considered people. So my editor made me pull back a little bit on it. She was like, okay, let's keep this a book.
But that's interesting. It's absolutely right. I mean, when you look at, well, other books, like, because when you're talking about historical books, whatever it is, a lady is a lady, and
Yeah.
I love the fact that your women aren't ladies in that sense of the word. They are women, and they're proud to be women, and at the same time, they're strong women who stand up for themselves and are not going to sit back and let these horrible things happen to them. So that's really great. They are survivors in every sense of the word.
Yeah,
Which
there's also, like this one, I guess these are the e-novellas, but these two girls are victims of domestic abuse. Of one girl is a victim of rape, and the other of uh, being preyed upon by men. But almost all of these women have in my books are fighting back and choosing their way in a way that maybe some people weren't able to during the Victorian time period.
that's really great because I think for a lot of people, reading is when you read a book that speaks to you. I think that helps you move on or make decisions that you wouldn't normally do. And having such great role model who had horrible things happen to them but are not content to just sit back and let it happen, but instead they are fighting back. I think those are really great um, outlets and inspirations for women who have been through what your characters have been, and also as you shared with us, what you've been through as a survivor as well. And I was just wondering if you'd like to just talk a little bit about how you got yourself out of that situation that you were in years ago as a
For sure.
survivor.
When I was in high school, I dated a boy briefly, and I broke up with him because he was controlling and had anger issues, and I didn't feel safe. So I broke up with him. I tried to be as nice as possible. I was never a mean girl, I guess. I wanted to be a nice person and just say this isn't working out. And unbeknownst to me, he started stalking me. He was following me around in his car. He would go to movies that I was at and sit behind me, follow me on dates with other boys, call my parents and ask them where I was. Things got very creepy, but one night I found out he'd followed me on a date and was sitting behind me at the movie theater, like directly behind me. I hadn't noticed it. And he said he just wanted to talk about what had happened in our relationship, and I wanted to be nice, and so I said yes. And so we went to his friend's house to talk, and he raped me at knife point. Um, at the time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fight back. I had been taught to be nice, um, and I don't know. At that time, people weren't as outspoken. I mean, this was mid '90s. People weren't quite as outspoken. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have ways for people to get together and talk about it. And I just thought that it was such a shameful thing. I never told anyone. I didn't fight back. I was afraid that he would hurt me. I basically dissociated and just tried to leave my consciousness. I remember like looking down on the scene, and then afterwards, like I kind of woke up in the bathtub and was just sitting under the hot water, like people do in movies. Um, but I never told my parents. I never told my friends. I never told the police. I was so ashamed that I'd let it happen to myself. I felt so stupid. And I told one teacher that I trusted, and she said, you don't have any evidence, and no one's going to believe you, because both of his parents are teachers. And so I never told anyone else. Um, Inside, I was completely broken. I didn't eat for a while there, and I went to college and was severely depressed, and made no friends. And then one day I stumbled into a Take Back the Night rally.
Right.
I don't know if they still have those, but it was just hundreds of women in the street holding signs, holding hands, and they had a microphone, and women were just going up there and stating what happened to them. And I got in line, and I just remember standing there, and there were just tears everywhere. And I was like, I was raped, and like everybody like was so supportive. And whenever you said something, they would all clap. Not like that they were happy that it happened, but just that they were proud of you for saying it. And I think that was when I actually started to be able to get over it, because you looked around and you're like, all of these women are here for the same reason that I am. Either it's happened to them or to someone that they care about. I had no idea. No one ever told anyone. I didn't know anyone else in high school who had been raped, simply because none of us told each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took a long time to. I married a psychologist in part because I could say, "Hey, something in my head is broken. Could you please fix me?"
Well, that's charm right there. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Delilah. It couldn't have been easy. I mean, I know you've talked about it before, but it's not something that's easy to talk about. I understand that, and I really want to thank you for sharing that. And I really hope that the fact that you shared it here will help some of our survivors also open up and talk and know that there's no excuse to be raped. It's never your fault. It's never your fault. People may
You know what someone said to me years later, I don't remember the circumstances, but they said, surviving is its own revenge. That surviving is fighting back. And it doesn't matter if you fought hard enough or well enough or what you said. The fact that you lived through it is your victory.
Yes, that's beautifully put, because not everybody has lived through it. And when somebody says things to you who's not been through what you've been through, then they don't know what they're talking about, especially when they say things. I think in a lot of recent reports or coverage on rapes, the first thing the woman is always asked, and that's come out, is what were you wearing? And it shouldn't matter what she was wearing. Or they ask, were you drinking? And it shouldn't matter if you were drinking. There's a certain way to treat somebody, whether she's dressed provocatively or not. That's her expression of her individuality, and that's her choice how she chooses to dress. There's no excuse to rape a woman, and she's never just asking for it. No one is asking for it. And I think we as a society are very slowly moving towards that, to understand that a woman can walk around naked if she wants, and that doesn't mean she's saying, hey, come and get it, So thank you so much for sharing that with you, because I think also a lot of, statistically, a lot of rapes occur between two people who know each other, and non-consent is always a big issue, and a lot of women feel pressurized. A lot of women feel like, okay, if I say no, he's gonna walk out and go out and get it from someone else. So I think it's so important that women especially know that rape is rape, whether you feel like you have to do it, if you're forced into it, if you're tied up and you can't do anything about it, if you're helpless, if it's not something that you want, then it's rape. It's non-consent, and it's nobody's fault but the person who rapes you. So thank you again for sharing that.
When I was in college at the University of Georgia, rape was a really big topic on campus. There was 5 points rapist. I was very concerned, and I had to walk around campus a lot at night. I bought a red-tailed boa constrictor, and when I had to walk around campus at night, I would wear this 5-foot-long snake around my neck, because I couldn't think of any better way to give people the idea that they really shouldn't mess with me than a 5-foot-long snake. Looking back, it's kind of ridiculous carrying the snake around in a pillowcase between classes, but that's how scared I was walking around one of America's most well-known college campuses at night, is that I had to carry a snake to keep from getting raped.
Yes, but you can look at it that way, and I would look at it as how brave you were to carry a snake around. I mean,
what snake? Trust that snake more than I trust most men back then.
That's right. Okay. So for you viewers out there, in about 3 minutes, we're going to open up the Q&A session, so you can ask Delilah lots of questions. So as many as you want. So go for it. Yeah. So I was wondering if you want to talk about the importance of having strong female characters. I mean, I know we touched on that. Strong female characters in storytelling, in media, as examples for women and young girls, especially growing up, and even young men, because they grow up looking at it and going, how do you treat a woman? So, what are your thoughts on that?
I I don't play video games, but boy, does the gamer gate that's going on right now scare me. The vitriol that people are spouting at women who just want to play video games is kind of astounding. I think there's a real danger to the anonymity of the internet sometimes, in that people will say things on the internet and make threats that they wouldn't dare say to someone's face or even on the phone. But it makes me kind of scared for my daughter, who's upstairs, not now, an hour ago, she was upstairs playing Magic with my husband. She's going to grow up and want to be a gamer. She loves that stuff. And it's kind of a scary world right now. I know, I'm trying to think of the TV shows I watch. I never got into Game of Thrones, but I heard the word rapey thrown around so much that I kind of didn't want to. Even Outlander, one of my favorites, like it includes violence against women in an unusual sort of context, and I've always kind of accepted it within the context of the book, but I'd feel very conflicted watching it with my daughter and trying to explain why Jamie beats Claire. It has so much to do with the historical context for it. When you're writing, I wrote this book, the one that came out in August, Servants of the Storm, is about a mixed race girl living in Savannah, and like people say stuff to her because they do. You can't walk around Savannah without hearing people say horrible things to people, whether because they're women or because they're obviously people of color. But these things are still happening, and it's hard because it's hard to read it in a book that you're reading for pleasure, to hear about horrible things, but leaving out the ugliness of the world doesn't do your readers a service, and doesn't properly deal with the problems that the readers might be having that would reflect their life. I have a book out next April called Hit. It's about a bank-owned America and teens that have to be assassins. And I had to write a scene where this girl was almost raped because in a world where there's no police, a nice-looking 17-year-old girl, like, that's going to happen. There's no police out there. Everybody has guns. Like, that's kind of... And the way that she fights back, is definitely a little bit healing for me to be like, this is what you get if you mess with these girls. It's nice to write females who are stronger than I was at that age, and who are more defiant, and who are more secure in their personhood and their rights as human beings. So I try to write females who are stronger than I am.
And I think that's it helps for a young adult, maybe in 14 to 17, to read books like the ones you write, where the characters are strong, and gain some courage and strength and inspiration from how the characters acted and react that way, the way they should, and not keep it inside because they were scared. So we're going to open up the Q&A session now, and let's see how many questions there are right now. Anybody, if you have any questions to ask Delilah about her books, about her upcoming books, about her characters, like how hot.
What kind of snake you need to wear around your neck to walk around dark places?
Boa constrictor, but I would not go near a snake, but I've not been in that situation where it's either a man or a snake, so I'll defer to Delilah on that one. Yes, but while we're waiting for the questions to come in, maybe can we talk about Criminy? How he's like, I went on Goodreads a while back just to kind of get an idea of what people thought about him, and everyone's going, oh my god, Criminy, oh my Criminy, you're gorgeous Criminy, so I was like, wow.
There he is.
Oh my god, he's so gorgeous. Like, seriously. And there's a whole element of Alice in Wonderland, isn't it, in Wicked as They Come? She goes to sleep and she wakes up somewhere else. It's like go down the rabbit hole. And killer bunnies?
No, this happened when my second child was about a year old and he wasn't sleeping. I was getting about 3 hours of sleep a night, and my brain broke, and I was having really vivid dreams and watching a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And one night I had the dream where Tish wakes up on the altar and sang and looks up and sees this kind of wicked Mr. Darcy character leaning against a tree staring at her. But I straight up dreamed that, and wrote the rest of the book so I could keep hanging out with that guy and see what else he said, because he talked like Spike on Buffy.
Spike on Buffy. Sorry, yes. It was always Spike for me, even when he was evil. Angel was sweet and all that, but come on, Spike.
Like,
But I have to ask, I mean, killer bunnies, I was like, fluffy little bunnies go around attacking people.
well, you know, so many vampire, I mean, I guess my bloods are not really vampire. They are people who drink blood and live a little bit longer, but so many of the vampire tropes are the Cullens from Twilight, where they're beautiful and they're cold and they're rich and they live forever. And I was just like, I want a world in which, like, the humans are scared of them and make them live in little ghettos and they don't have a lot of rights. Like, I wanted them to not be the ruling class. And so it kind of made sense to people, you know, if all of the animals drank blood, then the humans would have a lot more to fear in the world, and it would kind of twist the power around. It was all part of the attempt to not make boring vampires.
Not be boring vampires. And I think that's actually really interesting, because when most books on vampires focus on humans who turn into vampires, and there's not really much out there on vampire animals. I mean, generally when you see that, it's kind of like, yeah, that was a freak of nature, so you kind of just get rid of it, and by the end of the book, the animal's gone. I thought it was just so fascinating that the animals drank blood as well, and the description when she sees the bunny, and the bunny shows her its teeth, and I was like, oh my god, the bunny.
You know what was funny? We watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail with my kids last weekend, and my son was like, oh my god, they stole your bunnies! And I was like, no, they had that a little bit earlier than I did. And they came up with the killer bunnies.
They came up.
Gave the horses the teeth.
Okay, maybe I'll just start with some questions that I think I would like to ask you. I have the here. Okay, so maybe do you want to talk to us a little bit about your process, how you actually start when you imagine a story, or you're inspired by a book or an idea? How does the process actually go?
Sure. Everything starts with ideas, and I think if you talk to any writers, we get a ton of ideas. Ideas are the easy part. I keep a notebook that I write them all down in. Some of them are ridiculous. Like, if you read through my notebook, the half of it that you could read would make no sense. But much like how kind of some plants in a garden fight for sunlight, they're just ideas that kind of just tap at you, and I'll be laying half asleep at night and think about them. Or driving on the road and hear a song, and I won't stop thinking about it. And the ones that kind of fight to the forefront are the ones that I start to develop. As first I usually have like a hook in a world, like in this one I just had that scene with Criminy and Tish. And as it starts to get bigger, I build a playlist on Spotify based on music that feels like the story's starting to feel, about maybe things that I'm learning about the main character or some scenes I'm getting ideas for. And I start listening to the playlist constantly when I'm driving, when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm writing, and then whenever I hear that music, I'm in that world. And it just makes I guess I have synesthesia. All of my senses are crossed. So when I'm hearing the music, I'm mentally in that world. The Wicked as They Come, the first book, was mostly written to an album called Like Vines by a band called the Hush Sound. And if you listen to that album, you will hear hints about the story as it evolved. There are little quotes from the songs in there. There's a song called Sweet Tangerine, which is something that Criminy calls Letitia, and he compares her to a blood orange. There's a song about a ghost in a lighthouse. There's a song about being in a garden filled with apples. So if you look at the playlist in the books later on, you can see little echoes of things that happened in came along. I'm working on the fourth Blood book right now, We Could Ever After, which finishes out Crummy and Tisha's story. So I've been listening to that playlist.
Okay.
But all those playlists are on Spotify, so if you like one of my books and you'd like to hear the music that kind of inspired it and built it, it's all on Spotify under Delilah S. Dawson.
Okay. Did you hear that, guys? Go check out Spotify. I'm going to do that after this. Okay. What was the very first story that you ever wrote? Was it Wicked as They Come? Was it like the very first book you wrote and just took off from there, or?
No, when I was 6 years old, I wrote The Jungle and Its Life. At the end, the explorer got bitten by a cobra and died. No, I didn't know I wanted to be an author. I didn't know I wanted to write a book. I thought that authors were like nurses or lawyers that, God told them what they were early on and they spent their whole life struggling toward it. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I was just an artist who painted. And when my second kid was about 9 months old and my brain broke, I started hallucinating. And I went to my husband and was like, I think I'm going crazy. And he was like, wait, maybe you should try writing that down because that's kind of an interesting story. So my first story was called Fairy Tale, Ferry. It was about a mom of a young child who went on a ferry trip to Greece and accidentally slept with Zeus, as so many girls did in the old myths. And started seeing mythological creatures and people and goddesses and gods and satyrs and three-headed dogs everywhere. And I finished it. I finished the book, and I was super excited because I didn't think I could do it. And I went online and looked up all the links on how to revise, how to edit, how to query, how to find agents. All of those links are on my blog right now under resources. Like they're all there. They're all free. I found my agent nursing a baby on my couch in Atlanta with no MFA. But Fairy Tale, sadly, was fatally flawed because, as several kind agents pointed out, although they said it was a nice story, romance readers do not like infidelity. And because the whole story was predicated on infidelity of a very classical and historically accurate way, they were like, no one will ever buy this. So that's some old... Awful book. I think she was in a bathroom in Greece vomiting. That was the first scene. And then after she finished vomiting, she looked in the mirror and described herself.
Oh, maybe with a few very minor rewrites. Very soon we will see that in the shelves too. So we've got a couple of questions.
I got much more exciting murdery things right now.
So we've got a couple of questions here today. We've got one from Kevin Hearn. Kevin says, Joey in Servants of the Storms tries to wake up the population of Savannah to a growing demon problem, and I'm wondering to what extent that was metaphorical in your mind. Are people not seeing the demons of racism, violence against women, sexism, etc., or am I saying too much?
Yes, Kevin, that's exactly what I was doing. I did not think that deeply. I just imagined box-eared demons and went with it. But there was definitely, I knew from the very start that I wanted to write a story about the grittier part of Savannah and not to be gleaming white plantations in downtown corners. My husband is from Savannah, and we spend a lot of time there. We've gone about every year for the 15 years we've been together, and the parts that they show you in books and in movies, that's not Savannah. It is a dark, gritty place. Racial relations there are very strange and often charged. I was once in a McDonald's and there was almost a race riot because someone used a very bad word to describe someone else, and I had to run out of the McDonald's before I got shot. Like, it's not Pauline, guys. So from the very start, Servants of the Storm is definitely going to include sexism and racism and how that would affect a teen girl who is living in, a neighborhood on the way down and who wanted to be a good person and who was still having to fight these fights that we should have been done fighting in the 50s. that are still going on there. But no, it's not a metaphor because I'm not that awesome. I just like to tell funny stories. Well, horror stories. And I wish it was Kevin.
I hope that answers your question, Kevin. If you have more, please ask Delilah. I think she gets really excited to hear questions from you. We've got another. We've got another question.
On October 25th to do a signing at Foxtail Bookshop in Woodstock with me and Kevin and Sherry Priest and Molly Harper. So if you're in Atlanta,
yes. So if you're in Atlanta, go check them out. All of them together. It should be really fun. We've got another question. Sorry?
Oh, we're going to have cake.
All right, okay. We've got another question from Mel Primrose. Mel's asked, she said, "Hi Delilah, you're an awesome reader. Have you ever had any backlash for writing a strong woman? And if so, how did you deal with it?"
You know, I read one bad review of Wicked as They Come, and I cried for a while and decided I was going to stop reading bad reviews. So I haven't, if there has been backlash, I have studiously avoided it, and thankfully no one has sought me out to complain about it. Most of the complaints I've gotten or have read have just been that people think that this cover, that he doesn't look like a nice guy. The one that hurt me the most was on Goodreads. Someone kept putting pictures of the covers and writing the word rape face over it. And they didn't read the book. They made an assumption based on the cover that I didn't really, you know, authors don't have a lot of help in the cover, but Criminy is a character that is intent on consent and on a healthy relationship. And it was so hurtful that someone who hadn't read the book would judge it by its cover in such a way that made it seem like the lead character was not exactly what he was. So I guess I mainly dealt with that by going on a Twitter rant about maybe not using the word rape face.
Yeah.
It's not helping anyone.
Exactly. And
He did not have a rape face. He had nice all-American boy face, so that is not a term that I really think is helping anyone.
a rape face can be anywhere, anywhere belonging to anyone. So yeah. So it needs to be politically correct. But I think what you've done it's a good way to kind of just focus on the positive and remove the negative, because when you read negative reviews or even if you get bad criticism on your work, I mean, it's going to demotivate you, and we want you to stay motivated and constantly write gorgeous, wonderful books. So,
well, you know, after the book's out in print, there's not a lot I can do to make it better for you.
Okay. Okay, so I have another question here for you. Okay, so if an aspiring writer were to write to you and ask you for a constructive criticism, what kind of, I mean, without reading their work, what would be the first thing you would tell anyone who wants to be a writer?
I would point them to the resources page on my website. I wrote the 25 steps to being a traditionally published author, which is on Chuck Wendick's blog. I've got several links on there to agent blogs, to the Query Shark blog where you can learn how to query a book. On my website, I will tweet about a topic all day, like on editing your first draft, or on querying, or on how to develop an idea, and I'll tweet about it all day long and answer questions. And then at the end of the day, I'll use Storify to make it all into one big cohesive blog post, so you can just read straight through it all. So knowing that I can't, you know, I teach a class at Lit Reactor. I think I have a critique I'm doing for y'all, but I don't have time to read unsolicited work, as most writers don't. So I try to be available on Twitter anytime someone has a question. And you know, if somebody asks me on Twitter, like, hey, how do you write a first draft? I'll be like, you go to this blog post on my blog page. So I try to pass on the knowledge in that way. That's what I've learned. And I also teach, you know, the seminars and as a panelist speaker. I think I'm the Romance Writers of America in Tucson. So I really feel that as a writer who didn't know I wanted to be a writer until I was 32, I would love to be able to pay it forward to people in the way that other authors paid it forward to me with words of wisdom and encouragement. Because I really believe that you don't need anybody's permission to write a book. You don't need an MFA. You don't need to look for all you really need is a computer and an internet connection with that. Maybe writing, in long-term works. Like, you can totally do it.
Thank you, Delilah. So for all you aspiring writers out there, just check out Delilah's blog, watch the video. She's got really great words of wisdom for you. Follow them. And you never know, you could be creating your very own criminy.
And also just that I try to say this whenever I give advice, there is no one journey to being a writer or to writing a book. Everyone has their own process. Sometimes every book has their own process. If anybody promises you results or says that their way is the only way, you might just want to take that with a grain of salt because it's not true.
Thank you for that. I mean, I think a lot of people have that mentality like, okay, you got to do it this way because it worked for me. But what works for you might not work for someone else. So a little bit of individuality is needed in situations like this, I guess. So we've got another 5 minutes before 5 to 10 minutes before we close the Q&A session. So if you guys want to keep asking questions, you have that much time. In the meantime, I'm asking Delilah the questions. So Delilah, I've got to ask you, since Servants of the Storm is coming out next, has already come out, and as we said, Kevin has really read into the book and talked about demons of racism and violence against women. Can you talk about some aspects of violence against women in that book?
In Servants of the Storm?
Yeah.
That one is, aside from like a kind of lecherous guy in the drama club, it's not, the violence is more demon on human than specifically against women. My book that's out next April would be one that had far more violence against women issues. The heroine Patsy is kind of forced to become an assassin for the bank and kind of sent out into the world with a hit list and a gun. And a lot of that stems from the fact that her father left her mother when she was very young, and her mother wasn't in a position really to support herself and a young child on her own, and had to make some financial decisions that weren't that great. She lost a job because her boss wanted to hire someone younger and prettier, and had to take a lesser job. So a whole lot of the issues that happen there and throughout the whole book are that sometimes we are victims of choices that are not our own. Patsy has to take on her mom's debt because her mom she's infirm, she can't run around and do this. Once you send a 17-year-old out into the world alone, in a world without consequences, without a police force, she definitely gets into many situations where people intend to do her harm, and her only choice in self-defense is the gun that they've given her, and knowing that there is no police force, she has to do things that she feels hurt her soul, but she, at her basic heart, she tries to understand, why do I get to live and they don't? And her only answer is because I'm willing to fight to do it. But it's scary. I know we hear a lot of situations in which the police might not be helpful or might not take the woman's side in the way that would be the most truthful and hopeful for everyone. But it's pretty scary to think of a world without consequences for people who do intend harm toward women. Yeah, that book's really violent, and I think that's how the world would go if we didn't have police.
This is hit coming out in April 2015. Yeah. Okay, so we've got another question by Gemini Snake Lady 77. Her question is: feminism and feminists are not perceived in a positive light by many people. Are you a feminist, and what would you tell young people who deride feminism, even though they support feminism's ideals and principles?
I would say I'm definitely a feminist, but I think that feminism is. I know I hear lots of things about how feminists hate men. I love men. I've been married for 14 years. Some of my best friends are men, like Kevin Hurd and Chuck Wendig, who are feminists as well. I think that feminism is saying that men are human, that they're not ruled by base urges that force them to rape us and hurt us, that they are thinking, intelligent beings who would want us to be equals. So I would say that not being a feminist is basically saying that you don't believe that men have control over themselves, that they're animals. I don't know. I can't understand why anyone. I got actually kind of upset last week. There was a hashtag that was "Kill All Feminists," and it was like, what kind of women do you want in your world? Women who don't believe in themselves as human beings, like subservient slaves? What kind of a world would that be?
Yeah.
I don't. I guess it's a very charged word with charged issues and lots of knee-jerk reactions, and most of the people, I think, who claim to hate feminists haven't really considered what it actually means, and that it mainly means that we believe we're equals, which means that men are equal to us, which means that they don't have to, that they can control themselves, that a woman wearing a short skirt doesn't drive a man to such stupid, rabid insanity that he's justified in raping her, that a man can control himself and can appreciate women without disparaging them as human beings. So definitely a feminist, and will raise my daughter and my son to be so.
Thank you. Speaking of feminists, there's been a recent kind of, I wouldn't say rash, but there's been a movement of women talking against feminism. Can't remember the hashtag, but I remember reading it and going, do you actually know what feminism actually is? I mean, when you actually go around saying, no, I'm not a feminist, do you even know what it means? So I think this was a really good question, because you don't, it's true, when you think of feminist, when you say feminist, the automatic imagery I think that comes out is, all right, okay, we're going to burn our bras and hate all men, but that's not what feminism is. It's about living an equal life, equal rights, everything.
Seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
That's right. That should be a no-brainer, exactly. I mean, it's a fundamental human right. Everybody should have these rights. It's a human right, and that's what feminism actually is, but no.
That's about it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I have a couple of questions more for you, Delilah, and I think we are closing the Q&A session. So, sorry guys, maybe you can post comments to Delilah's Facebook page, or even on.
I'm always on Twitter, Delilah S. Dawson. Always happy to answer questions in 140 characters or less. Or possibly more if you need like a whole day of tweets. I'm there for you.
So there you go. Delilah's really available for you online. And she's really friendly, and don't be afraid to talk to her, because look at her, she's just amazing. So go ahead, ask any questions you want, but just stay on a bit longer. We'll just round up in another 5 to 10 minutes. So Delilah, I've got a couple more questions for you from the Pixel project. This is not from me personally. We would like to know why you support the Pixel project as a whole, and in particular the Read for Pixels campaign.
Violence against women is something that has touched the women in my family as far back as I know, and it stops with me, and it's not going to happen to my daughter. And anything I can do to, I guess we hear from so many people who the tragedy is all that they are, and I'm not that. It is part of me, but it's not the end of who you are. If you have suffered this, every day is a new day. You can move on. You can be anything you want to be, no matter what someone has told you should be or have to be. It's not true. It's very important to me to spread the word that you can be a strong woman. It doesn't matter what's happened until today. Today is the only day that matters. From here on out, you can choose to do or be anything.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of things to say. Just So if what you can do is, if you want to find out more about what violence against women is all about, what the Pixel Project is doing to combat violence against women with our amazing partners, NCADD, as well as our great authors who signed up, like Delilah, to support the project, our male role models who have also signed up to support the whole concept, just visit our website at www.thepixelproject.net. And you can also go up to reveal.thepixelproject.net to learn more about the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign. And we really appreciate your donation, and donate generously to help us reveal pixels and to raise $1 million for the cause. And what we will do is, when you're talking about a Read for Pixels, we've got more Read for Pixel campaigns coming up, sessions coming up. I think we've got authors like Chuck Wendick coming up. We've got authors like Cinda Williams-Chima coming up. And Delilah has also very generously shared some goodies for us at Indiegogo, as well as at Indiegogo, or if you can donate something, go to Razoo or Indiegogo. So we've got books by Delilah, and we've got some Drabble packs as well. So we're all really excited about it. So if they're all up for grabs for you, just get on over to any one of these sites, is.gd/r4p Indiegogo. For Indiegogo, you can go to is.gd/r4p Razoo for Drabble and PayPal donors and Drabble lovers, sorry. And if you want to find out more about Read for Pixels and the list of authors who signed up to support the cause, just head on over to is.gd/read4, that's number 4, Pixels 2014. Okay, thank you. And we've also got, if you want to find out more about what the Pixel Project is all about, please head on over to our website. Let me just put up the screen share here for you so you can check it out. That's right here. Just a minute, it is not opening the page. There you go. It's over here. Okay, yeah. We can review 4 famous male role models hidden under 1 million pixels, and each pixel is going for just US $1 per pixel. So what the Pixel Project is doing is we're raising US $1 million for the Pixel Project and the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So what we want you to do, and we ask you to do, is to rally a community to take action together to stop violence against women and girls. Thank you very much, everybody, for sharing your time and attending our session today. And again, a big thank you to Delilah for giving her time and reading the chapter of Wickedness to Come, and for sharing her experience as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day or good night wherever you are in the world.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.